Noor Suzaily Mukhtar was born in Kangar, Perlis, Malaysia on June 9, 1976. She was the third of four children born to parents Mukhtar Ibrahim and Harrison Hussein and was their only daughter. She was lovingly known as Susie, and she was 24 years old at the time of our story. Susie was a graduate of De Montfort University in Leicester, England, and had just recently returned to Malaysia. She was employed as a computer engineer at the Pantai Medical Center in Klang. Susie called it her dream job. Susie rented a home in the Kampong Baru neighborhood of Kuala Lumpur with her roommate, Rosam Liza Umar. She was also engaged to a man named Rudy Sharin Abdul Rahman, although not much is known about him. At around 7:45 a.m. on October 7, 2000, Susie left her home and boarded the Express Kiara bus headed to Klang to get to work. Susie wasn't alone on the bus that morning. There were many other passengers making their morning commute. One by one, they exited at their stops before the only passengers left were Susie and a Bangladeshi national. However, once Susie was alone on the bus, the driver, 34-year-old Hanafi Mat Hassan, veered from his normal route. Instead of heading to the hospital, the driver headed down Jalan Bukit Tinggi. As I'm sure many of our listeners don't speak Malay, Jalan is the Malay word for road. As soon as he did so, Susie knew something was terribly wrong, and sadly, she was right.
Now, before we get into what happened on the bus, I think it's important to discuss the bus driver and his troubled history. Hanafi Mat Hassan was a resident of Bachak, Kelantan, Malaysia, and was the seventh of 8 children. He had been married 4 times, and 3 of his marriages had ended in divorce. He also had 3 daughters from his previous marriages. At the time of our story, Hanafi's 4th wife was due to give birth to the couple's son. The bus driver also had a rather checkered past with law enforcement, to say the least. In 1988, he was arrested for the essay of one of his ex-wives. In 1994, he was charged with criminal breach of trust. This is defined as someone misusing funds they were managing, using property for personal gain, or violating a trust agreement. In 1996, he was convicted of robbery with hurt, which is the equivalent of aggravated robbery here in the States. It normally includes the use of a deadly weapon, a serious injury to the victim, or other aggravating circumstances. For that offense, he served 30 months in prison and was given 2 lashes with a cane. At the time of our story, Hanafi had only been employed as a bus driver for 10 days. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Please stick around for the following ad. It not only supports the channel, but it also supports charities in our area. This week's episode has been sponsored by CyberGhost VPN. With over 38 million users worldwide, CyberGhost is one of the most trusted VPN providers on the market. They boast a near-perfect rating on Trustpilot with over 20,000 users rating it excellent, and for a good reason. Think incognito mode protects your privacy? Well, think again. Your internet provider, workplace, school, home Wi-Fi, and even the websites you visit can still track everything you do online. And this is where CyberGhost VPN comes in. It encrypts your internet traffic and reroutes it through secure servers in 100+ countries, ensuring complete privacy and security. No one, not hackers, not your ISP, not even CyberGhost itself, can see what you do online. But that's not all. With CyberGhost, you can access 40+ streaming platforms, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+, and enjoy content from different countries in just a few clicks. CyberGhost works on all devices and operating systems and lets you protect up to 7 devices at once. Perfect for sharing with friends and family. 1 subscription, total protection. CyberGhost has an exclusive deal just for Misery Machine listeners. Click the link in the description to grab an 84% discount and 4 months free. Plus, with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support, you can try it completely risk-free. Don't wait. Click the link, download CyberGhost VPN, and start protecting your digital life today. Thanks, and back to the episode.
Susie tried to call for help, but the driver stopped the bus and attacked her in an attempt to keep her silent. During the struggle, she was overpowered by Hanafi, who then essayed the young woman in the front and the back. However, there were witnesses to the attack that attempted to intervene. 18-year-old A. Devon was riding his bike to a tuition center when he saw a topless Susie struggling in the bus. When he approached the bus, he witnessed Hanafi pulling up his pants. There were also 3 men on motorcycles, which included a man in his 50s and a driving school instructor. When Hanafi attempted to flee the scene, the 4 men chased after him. The bus headed to Taman Shi Liang, a residential neighborhood in Klang, and turned off on Jalan Sembao. After stopping the bus once more, he finally noticed that the men who had witnessed the attack had caught up with him. He reversed the bus and sped back toward Taman Shillong before parking the bus in a secluded area of Bandar Bukit Tinggi, an upscale neighborhood about 5 kilometers south. There, he assaulted Susie once more before strangling her to death with her own hijab. After killing Susie, Hanafi threw her naked body from the bus near a construction site, where it was later discovered by a Good Samaritan. Her body was taken to the hospital for an autopsy performed by forensic pathologist Dr. Halim bin Mansar. According to the pathologist, Susie had suffered from upwards of 44 injuries that covered her body, which included a broken neck. He confirmed that she had been essayed prior to death and that male DNA had been recovered from her body. The official cause of death for Susie was ruled as strangulation and blunt force trauma, and her manner of death was a homicide. Susie's body was returned to her family soon after her autopsy and was buried in a cemetery in her hometown of Kangar.
Following an extensive police investigation, which included eyewitness testimony, Hanafi Mat Hassan was arrested 3 days later at the North Klang bus terminal. As we mentioned prior in our coverage of Canny Yong's case, the neighborhoods where the crimes took place are not small villages. Rather, they are urban environments with high-traffic roadways. It's very likely that the 4 men who chased the bus around Klang were not the only witnesses that day. In fact, over 55 witnesses would later be summoned to testify against Hanafi. Hanafi admitted to everything, claiming that he could not resist attacking Susie due to her beauty. He even brought the police to the crime scene and showed them where he'd hidden her purse in a drain. The purse, along with all of Susie's personal documents, were still there. A sad twist of events, Hanafi's wife went into premature labor the same day that her husband murdered Susie. The couple's baby boy passed away the same day his father was arrested. Hanafi was remanded into police custody to assist with the investigation and scheduled to be formally charged in court on November 1st, 2000. Again, much like we mentioned prior in Canny Ong's case, the charge of murder carries a mandatory sentence of death in Malaysia, while SA carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, plus lashes with the cane. Although he initially confessed to his crimes, Hanafi pled not guilty after he was officially charged with murder in SA. According to reports, Hanafi smirked as his charges were being read.
Hanafi's trial took place on March 12, 2001 at the Shah Alam High Court. It lasted 65 days. The wealth of evidence against Hanafi was so strong that at some points in the trial, his lawyers wanted to stop defending him. Taking the stand in his own defense, Hanafi spun a ridiculous tale. He claimed that Susie did in fact board his bus headed to the medical center in Klang, but had gotten off the bus at her intended destination. He claimed that a friend of his boarded the bus as his final passenger, and that while having a conversation with the aforementioned friend, he became distracted and nearly ran over cyclist A. Devon. Mind you, A. Devon had already testified against him, making Hanafi's testimony all the more ridiculous. He claimed that he sped away from the scene for his own safety after seeing a group of men with sticks and iron rods chasing the bus. However, he couldn't explain how his male DNA was found on Susie's body.
On April 26, 2002, Justice Mohd Hishamuddin Muhammad Yunus rendered his verdict. Now 36-year-old Hanafi was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. For the charge of SA, Hanafi was found guilty and given a 20-year sentence with 12 strokes of a cane. Susie's brother Muhammad Muharis and friend Sharin Abdul Wahid were present for the verdict. Both were satisfied with the outcome. Hanafi appealed his sentence. His first appeal was denied on August 13, 2005, so he took his case to the Federal Court of Malaysia. They too upheld his sentence on December 12, 2006. Not wanting to face the gallows, Hanafi asked the Sultan of Selangor for a royal pardon, but that too was denied. According to reports, Hanafi's 80-year-old mother supported the rulings and apologized to Susie's family for her son's actions. She said, and I quote, "No one was above the law." In addition, one of Hanafi's former ex-wives asked for her ex-husband to be put to death swiftly so that their children wouldn't have to learn that their father was a murderer. Susie's family, of course, was satisfied with the dismissal of Hanafi's appeals. Hanafi was held at the Kajang prison awaiting his death sentence. This was the same prison that held Canny Yong's killer Ahmad Najib Ben Aris and singing witch Mona Fandi. Now 42 years old, Hanafi was put to death by hanging on December 19, 2008. After a routine autopsy at the Kajang hospital, his remains were returned to his family and subsequently buried at the Kampung Kubar Datu Cemetery in Binjai, Kelantan, Malaysia. According to reports, when news of the execution reached Susie's family, they were glad that justice was finally carried out on her killer. Her father, Mukhtar Ibrahim, never forgave Hanafi for what he did to his daughter, but did express sympathy for the family that he left behind. In 2022, the mandatory death sentences for murder were set to be abolished in Malaysia. However, cases such as Susie's as well as Canny Yong's were discussed. While many supported the abolition of capital punishment, others felt that it should remain for cases that were especially heinous in nature. In April of 2023, the abolition of mandatory death sentences was approved. As of the date of this recording in 2025, those convicted of murder, drug trafficking, and terrorism in Malaysia can be sentenced to prison terms of 30 to 40 years, cane lashings, or death. The last executions to be carried out in the country occurred on May 24, 2017.
In the wake of Susie's death, the country of Malaysia was shocked and called for changes to be made. It was proposed that all buses should have their windows changed from tinted glass to larger paned ones to discourage crimes from taking place. There were also measures introduced to register bus drivers with criminal records. Due to the nature of the crime and the fact that it occurred on a bus, Susie has been referred to as Malaysia's Nirbhaya, referencing the 2012 attack on Jyoti Singh in Delhi, India. Susie's murder served as a call to action to protect women and young girls from violence. The same month that Susie was attacked by Hanafi, a 5-year-old girl named Noor Shuhada Burak was essayed, murdered, and dumped in a rooftop water tank. The culprit was her 12-year-old neighbor. Sadly, not much else is known about this little girl's case. 7 years later, on September 17, 2007, an 8-year-old girl named Nurin Jazlin Binti Jazimin was found in a gym bag. The bag was found by a shopkeeper in Petaling Jaya. She was nude and stuffed inside the bag in a fetal position. At an autopsy performed at the Kuala Lumpur hospital, it was discovered that Nurin had been dead for more than 6 hours before the shopkeeper discovered her body. She was the victim of SA and had a bacterial infection that had caused her death. She'd been assaulted with a cucumber and an eggplant, which was still inside of her body. The trauma caused her bowels to rupture, leading to the infection. Nurin had to be identified using DNA, as her body had changed so much after death that her parents couldn't recognize her anymore. To add insult to injury, Nurin's parents were victims of prank phone calls, claiming that their daughter was still alive and in the care of an unknown person.
The saga unfolded after Nurin went missing on the evening of August 16, 2007, after heading to a night market near her home to purchase a hair clip. After she didn't return home, her parents, Jazimin Abdul Jalil and Nuraisi Bistamin, filed a missing persons report. In response, several organizations, including the news media and NGOs, helped search for Nurin and signal boosted her case. In subsequent weeks, the police obtained CCTV footage from the evening of the 16th that showed Nurin being dragged into a white van. Citizens across Malaysia dubbed Nurin's murder as the country's most horrifying crime in years, and we would have to agree with them. Due to the outrage that a psychopathic killer was out on the loose, then Prime Minister Abdullah Ahmad Badawi considered publicizing the list of convicted offenders who had committed crimes against children. Now, back in 2007, Malaysia didn't have a registry like we have here, and based on our research, they still don't have one available online. Per a March 2019 article by the Asia Times, the government planned on rolling a registry out a month later, but it never came to pass. The prospective registry was aimed at parents, schools, and daycare centers to screen prospective employees who could be hired to care for their children. In order to make an inquiry, an applicant would need to complete a form, state their relationship to the individual, and the nature of their request at a state office. In a surprising turn of events, the public, along with Inspector General Musa Hassan, wanted to charge Nurin's parents with negligence under Section 33 of the Child Act of 2001. The suggestion sparked public outcry from those who opposed the idea, as well as Malaysia Crime Prevention Foundation Chairman Lee Lim Thai, who thought punishing Nurin's parents would be unfair and certainly not in the interest of justice. There were several arrests in connection to Nurin's murder, but none of them resulted in any sort of conviction. On September 27, 2007, federal agents arrested 4 men and 1 woman between the ages of 27 and 35 during a raid in the city of Shah Alam. The woman was released from police custody after questioning, while the men were supposed to be held for 7 days. However, they were released after 3 due to lack of evidence. On October 2nd, 2007, police arrested an Indonesian woman in a market who attempted to swallow a SIM card when confronted. Sadly, none of these arrests brought police any closer to catching Nurin's killer. In an attempt to entice the public, police put up a 10,000 ringgit reward for any information that could lead to the arrest of those involved. An anonymous businessman matched their pledge, bringing the total reward to 20,000 ringgit. On October 11th of the same year, the police finally caught a break in the case. CCTV footage of the parking lot of the market where the gym bag carrying Nurin's body was found was sent to the American FBI for review. According to reports, the first clip, which was recorded about 1 p.m. on September 16th, captured a motorcyclist leaving the bag containing Nurin's body in the lot. An hour later, a second clip captured a woman meandering about the lot. She was later picked up by 3 men who arrived on the scene. Unfortunately, even after the FBI enhanced the footage, they were unable to view the face of the motorcyclist or the license plate number. Without any new leads, Nurin's case eventually went cold.
Nurin was buried in a Muslim cemetery in the Taman Ibu Kota neighborhood of Kuala Lumpur on September 21, 2007, right after afternoon prayers. In 2018, Nurin's father begged the police to reopen her case and investigate it using the latest technology. But as of the date of this recording in April of 2025, the person or persons that are responsible for her murder are still at large.
So one thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this case, having covered Mona Fandey and Canny Ong and now these cases, I think it might give off the impression to somebody not familiar with the area that Malaysia is this very dangerous place. But when we were there, it was one of the safest places we had ever been to.
Yeah, and they have a very strong police presence. And I don't want people to think that's scary. It wasn't scary, but they have their own private security everywhere. And when I'm talking everywhere, outside every door. So let's just say you're going into a hotel. There's going to be one outside. There's going to be one in reception. There's going to be one over at an elevator. They're wandering everywhere. And not only that, there's just like these little satellite police stations all over the city, and there's actual police as well. So it's not this lawless place. And
the police presence isn't oppressive either, to be clear.
No.
These aren't a bunch of people with rifles everywhere. You have the private ones, which don't even have guns. They'll hold the doors open for you. They'll you can ask them for directions. And then there's actual police people who are in more important areas. It's not this militarized presence. And I never felt intimidated by them. I never felt like they really cared. They were just there doing their job.
I know some people have asked after we did Canny Ong's case, but the whole reason we were in Malaysia was because they have a better healthcare system than we do.
Yeah. The US dollar is very strong, very, very strong. And it's very affordable there because healthcare is not a business over there like it's a business here. Over here, it's how much money can we get out of you. Over there, it's businesses actually competing against each other. Who can give you the best value for your bottom dollar? And
it's the private service, if you will, versus the public healthcare system, and they're constantly trying to see who gives the best deal. So they're fighting for your business rather than the other way around.
And just to give an idea of how good this was, I was able to get in with an ear, nose, and throat specialist that day, the same day I tried to make the appointment. And I think at the end of it, we got services that here would have cost somewhere around $20,000 without insurance, and it only cost us $400, $500 for everything.
It's $400.
So with flight and all of that included, it was cheaper just to go over there and have all your labs done and just have your yearly checkup. And for a lot of people, that's why it's an attractive destination, because of the healthcare, because of how far you can stretch the US dollar for cheap.
So when we covered Kenny Ong's case, one thing that we had learned was that there's a mandatory death sentence for murder in Malaysia. However, when we did Susie's case, we found some new information about the abolition, if you will, in 2023. So I found that really interesting. Now it's, what was it, 30 to 40 years in prison with lashes or death. So it's like an optional thing, kind of like what we have here now, where you have either a set amount of time or you get the death penalty depending on your state.
They didn't do away with the lashes, just the death penalty in most
Yes.
circumstances.
Right. One thing I found really interesting is some folks have said that maybe it is better to just have the death penalty than what it would be to live in a South Asian prison for the rest of your life.
Because of the
like,
humidity.
think about it, it's a very cramped quarters, 90% humidity. That's not where I'd like to be going.
I also think we need to touch more on Noor and Jazlin's case, because there wasn't that much information on this. And when we finished, it was just really hard for me to step away from it, because it's been 17, 18 years at this point, and they're still no closer to solving it. And there was information that I feel like if I found in an American case, I would have a lot more of an explanation of. And I don't know if that's the language barrier in translating records or what, but October of 2007, they arrested an Indonesian woman trying to swallow a SIM card.
Yeah.
That's all the information we have on it. There's no arrest record.
What's on the SIM card?
Yeah, exactly. There's no information of what was on the SIM card or who this woman was. And apparently whatever it wasn't enough to implicate Nurin's killer. But in defense of the government of Malaysia, it's not often I see another country's government reach out to the United States government for assistance in solving a case that isn't international. So when I see something like this, it gives the impression that the government of Malaysia does care about solving this case. But if this wasn't enough to solve it, will it ever be solved? I'm
right. That makes
just
me
not
wonder
confident.
if it's been almost 20 years now. Things have changed, and it makes me worried that, maybe her killer or killers might not be alive anymore.
And the fact that they just wanted to charge the parents for negligence is just disgusting. It's as if they recognized that they were not going to catch the killer, so they just wanted to hold someone accountable, whether it was fair or not. And I'm glad that didn't stick. It's horrifying that they would even put that out in the public. And if somebody told me, oh, that still follows the parents around, or they still have the stigma around them because of that public outcry, or because some official said, hey, we should charge the parents, I wouldn't be shocked if that still haunts them. Your internet security is important. Don't forget to click the description link to get the special discount CyberGhost VPN is granting to our listeners. They will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all block content on the internet for only $2.03 a month. Totally risk-free, so check it out.